It's funny. We spend so much time talking about what movie we're watching, but when was the last time you really thought about how you're watching it? Today, we're going to take a trip back in time to explore the incredible magic of the movies, from these grand old palaces of the past, all the way to the little screens we carry around in our pockets. We're going to ask, what does it all mean for the future of film? All right, let's get into it. Just look at this place. I mean, come on. This wasn't just a building you went to. It was a destination. It was an experience. Before the opening credits even rolled, you were already somewhere else, completely transported. The real show wasn't just on the screen. It was in the glamour and the sheer magic of the theater itself. So how on earth did we get here? Well, our story really kicks off at the turn of the 20th century. This is when film just exploded. It went from being this little sideshow novelty to a massive global industry, a real-life dream factory where, let's be honest, the money really started to talk. What's just staggering is how fast this all happened. I mean, think about it. In 1905, you have the very first dedicated movie theater, the Nickelodeon. Just 2 years later, there are 4,000 of them across the country. That's explosive growth. Pretty soon, Hollywood becomes this dedicated movie town, and by 1929, you've got the first Academy Awards. Film wasn't just a business anymore. It was a major, major cultural force.
And right away, this created a tension that has defined movies ever since. On the one hand, people saw film as this powerful new art form, a kind of sanctuary, a place to just escape and forget. But on the other hand, it was a huge business, totally driven by publicity, fan magazines, and box office numbers. So you've got this constant tug of war, art versus commerce, and that battle started right from the very beginning.
Okay, so that's the industry side of things. But what about us, the audience? For decades, going to the movies wasn't just an activity. It was a habit, a ritual. It was a central part of people's lives.
Have you ever heard this phrase, "This is where we came in"? Probably not, right? It sounds like nonsense to us now, but it points to a totally lost era of moviegoing. See, the shows ran on a continuous loop. You could just walk in at any point, middle of the movie, who cares, watch it to the end, and then just stay in your seat until the story circled back to the part you missed. Can you imagine that today? A completely different way of watching.
And the theaters. Oh, the theaters themselves were part of the show. They were called picture palaces for a reason. You had places like the Grand, the Savoy, the Ritz, the Rialto. They were designed to make you feel like you were stepping into a whole other world, an Italian garden, a grand ballroom, long before the movie even started. There's actually a name for this deep, passionate love for the entire experience: cinephilia. The incredible writer Susan Sontag put it perfectly. She said it's about being in love with cinema, not just individual films. It's the magic of the whole thing. That feeling of wanting, as she said, to be kidnapped by the movie, seated in the dark among anonymous strangers. It's this special kind of surrender that you just can't get anywhere else. So what exactly were people watching in these dark, magical rooms? Well, a lot of the time, they were watching stories they kind of already knew, because film, maybe more than any other art form, absolutely loves genre. It speaks this shared language of repetition, recognition, and variation that we, as an audience, just eat up. Let's take the Western, for example. From the early epics of John Ford all the way to Clint Eastwood's modern classics, the genre was doing more than just telling stories about cowboys. It was building a foundation myth for America itself, a grand story about that line between the wild frontier and civilized society, between law and chaos. And this line from The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance just perfectly captures the heart of the Western. It says it all, doesn't it? The genre was never really about getting the history right. It was about the power of the story, the power of the legend. That's what people came to see. Then you've got the musical, which usually followed one of two classic paths. You had the whole "let's put on a show" plot, right? Where the entire story is about the struggle to get that big, triumphant final number on stage. And then you had the Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers style, where dance wasn't just a performance, it was the entire conversation. It was flirting, it was arguing, it was falling in love, all told through movement. And, of course, the gangster film. The critic Robert Warshaw totally nailed its appeal with this quote. The gangster is like this dark, twisted version of the American dream. He achieved success through pure ambition and violence. We're drawn to his power and his freedom, but at the same time, we're absolutely terrified of what it costs him and everyone around him. But this golden age of grand theaters and beloved genres, well, it couldn't last forever. A new force was about to enter the picture, and it would trigger the first of many, many times that people would stand up and declare that cinema was dying. Just look at these numbers. In 1946, Americans were buying 100 million movie tickets every single week. Less than a decade later, that number got chopped by more than half. Thousands of theaters just shut their doors for good. The culprit? That new glowing box that was suddenly sitting in everyone's living room.
Yup, television was the first great disruptor, but it sure wasn't the last. In the 80s, the VCR came along, and suddenly you didn't have to go out to see a movie. You could own it. Then came DVDs, and finally, streaming. And with each new wave of technology, a new chorus of voices popped up to declare the death of cinema.
And this just fundamentally changed the whole ritual of watching a movie. The cinema experience was this communal thing. You were in the dark, you couldn't hit pause, and you had to plan your life around a showtime. The home experience? It's all about individual choice. You have total control. Pause, rewind, skip. What you gain in convenience, though, you lose in that sense of shared surrender. All of which brings us right here to today. We are absolutely drowning in moving images. They're on every screen all the time, which forces us to ask a really, really basic question. What even is a film anymore? Well, think about it like this for a second. A photograph used to be a chemical trace of something that was really there, in the world. It was a physical record. A digital image, though, it can be manipulated endlessly. It can be created from scratch out of thin air. So, has its basic connection to reality been completely severed? Okay, let's make it even more real. Your uncle films a 30-second clip of a family barbecue on his phone, and he posts it online. Is that a film? I mean, it's a moving image, it tells a tiny little story, but does it count in the same way as the movies we've been talking about? Where do we draw the line? This really leads us to two different ways of thinking about it. On one hand, you've got the strict sense. A film is a crafted, intentional story. It's shaped by a filmmaker with a vision. But on the other hand, you have the loose sense, where film can just mean any piece of footage, a fragment, an accident, a random moment you capture. The first one tries to control chance, while the second one often celebrates it. But maybe, just maybe, the core purpose is still the same. Whether we're talking about a Hollywood blockbuster or that clip on your phone, film still taps into this deep human need we have to capture moments. In a world that's just full of noise and distractions, it lets us define, fix, and hold on to a little piece of time, mixing what we actually remember with what we dream. So the final question really is for you. In an age where it feels like everything is being recorded all the time, what's the role of the storyteller? What does it even mean to create a film when the world is already overflowing with footage? The story of cinema is far from over. If you ask me, it's just getting into its next and most unpredictable chapter.